Hey, everybody, Bobby Medina here with my good buddy, the great Paul Barron. And today we are bringing you somebody extra special because you probably know him as the man behind the scenes. He is the host of the Trumpet Gurus podcast that goes worldwide. And it's a wonderful podcast if you haven't checked that out. But usually he's the guy that's doing all the interviews. So we thought it would be really fun to learn a little bit more about him and put him in the spotlight and put him in the hot seat as well. So he's a freelance musician from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He's an author, a coach, and a consultant specializing in mindfulness and mindset and mastery. And he's also an expert in Chinese martial and energy arts with over 30 years of experience. And he's also the author of Mindfulness Secrets. Welcome, Jose Johnson. Great to have you here today.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. This is an honor.
Well, the honor is ours. And Bobby and I have both been interviewed by you. And now it's time that we can, pick your brain for a little while. So I guess my first question is, the Trumpet Gurus was like, you began that such a long time ago. How many interviews have you done? And the choice of the title, Trumpet Gurus, I neglected to ask you in the past. So tell us about that as well.
Well, I guess the backstory is that it'd been percolating in my head for a while, and so far I just released episode 125, and I still have like another 4 in the can right now. I'm trying to stay ahead on the production schedule. The way that it came about is actually I got the idea. I was at ITG in King of Prussia, and I forget how many years ago it was, but I was there and I was hanging out with Wayne Bergeron, Bobby Shue, Frank Green, Mike Chikowitz. So there's this little crew of us that was just kind of hanging out a whole lot. And I was just thinking to myself, man, this is so much fun. I enjoy this so much. I just wish that other people had a chance to do this, because so many of my friends would say, oh, how did you get to meet Wayne Bergeron? How'd you get to meet these guys? And I was like, yeah, I just went and started talking to them. That's how I met them. And so I started thinking, it would be really cool to be able to get people in on that kind of conversation that we have, as trumpet players when we get together, whether it be at a convention or after a concert or something like that, just to do a hang. So that's where the hang part came in. And the Trumpet Gurus part was, obviously the trumpet part is self-explanatory, but the Gurus part was kind of like, I wanted to get people who had a level of experience, wisdom, knowledge that we're willing to share. And I think guru kind of has a weird connotation in our culture, but basically a guru is someone who has experience and likes to share. It's almost like being a teacher. Sure. So that's what I wanted. I wanted this to be people who had interesting stories to share, experiences to share with people. I wanted it to be a casual hang, so getting to know people. So that's how it all came about.
Awesome. So in a nutshell, how did you get involved even playing in the trumpet? I mean, everybody has a different story, and it's an interesting one typically when we hear it. So I'm curious as to what your introduction was to the instrument.
My father was he was a minister by the time I was born. He was a minister, but prior to that, in his previous life, he was a professional singer. Actually did a lot of he did his shows where the first half was opera, light opera, things like that, classical, solo rep. He was a tenor, and then the second half was all Negro spirituals. So this was back in the 30s when he first started doing this. So it was kind of he had a very interesting backstory. So I always had music in the house though. And he wanted me to do some music. And I remember having the first day at school when they were like, okay, here are all the instruments and you get to pick which one you're gonna play. And I actually really wanted to play drums, and my dad said, no, you're gonna play a real instrument. So that
Nice.
That's at the stage right there. Because he wanted me to be able to read music, and so first I actually wanted to play saxophone. And then I looked at the saxophone and said, there are way too many keys on that thing. There's no way I'm going to learn it. Then I thought about trombone, and then it's like, well, how the heck do you know where the notes are? It's all this. So I said, trumpet's only got 3 valves. How hard can that be?
Little did you know.
Yes. In a long string of bad decisions that I've made in my life. That was the first one. No, but that's actually why I kind of picked trumpet. It wasn't that I was drawn to it immediately, but it was kind of like my 3rd or 4th choice. But once I started playing it, there was just something about it. And I look back now, and I would not. The only thing I would change would be I would probably practice a heck of a lot more. So.
Well, I was curious, and Paul and I are always very, very curious about the the playing of the instrument and everything that goes into it. So many facets of it, and there's just also so many ways to play it. Everybody approaches it differently. Do you have a particular approach? Do you have a series of maybe mentors or teachers that have helped you along the way? Because I know you've sat down with like tons of people now, and you have I'd say a lot of experience and knowledge about it. I'm just kind of curious as to your take. What makes Jose Johnson work, on the trumpet?
Man, if I could figure that out, life would be a lot easier for me. Well, I think like many people, unfortunately, many people, I didn't really have the best teachers when I was growing up, and I actually kind of got screwed up by my college professor. When I was, when I first started playing, I approached the trumpet the way that I approached the trumpet. It was, the things that I heard, the people that were popular on the radio at that point. I'm in my 60s, so it's like Herb Alpert, Al Hurt, Doc
Al Hurt, yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, those are people that I would like see on TV, or you hear them on the radio and things like that. I got turned on to Maynard Ferguson when I was a sophomore in high school, and my mind was completely blown, and I became obsessed with playing high notes like way too many people. And I developed the ability to play in the upper register, and it was not, it was just doing all kinds of weird things and things that now I know I probably shouldn't have done, but they were kind of working. But I had horrible tone. I mean, my tone was so strident, so brilliant. I was lacking a lot of control. So when I got to college, and I was majoring in music ed, and my professor, like he did the thing that has just annoyed me to no end, and I have kind of made it my mission to not to do this, and to work against this so much. It's like, okay, well, your sound is your sound's not great, and your control's not great. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you on a 1.5 C. I was playing on a jet tone T2C at the point. We're gonna put you on a 1.5 C. You need to get a Bach trumpet. I was playing on a Holton ST302 at the time. So new mouthpiece, new trumpet, and by the way, we're going to change your embouchure. So the trifecta. And I went from being able to play not particularly musically, but having the facility to play into the double and triple register, to, for a year and a half, I could not play out of the staff for a year and a half. And I was so frustrated. And then one day, my prof was just like, we've tried this for a year and a half. It's not working. So maybe we should just go back to the way you were playing before. Ugh. And that was the day I decided I was going to leave school. I was just so frustrated and so beaten up over it. And I did go back to the way I play more naturally. And over the years, then I started to search out people who could give me some insights. So, I think the first person that really kind of helped me to gain a better grasp on this was Roger Ingram. So I worked with Roger a little bit, and he gave me some concepts that really helped me out. Then I studied with Vaughn Nark for a while, and Vaughn really helped me out a lot, and particularly as he began to introduce me to some of like the Reinhardt methods, and that really kind of, I think if I had to say there's one thing that's really kind of been my base, it's maybe been the foundation from Reinhardt. Because of that, I have that kind of analytical mind. So being able to say, okay, well, this is my physical structure, this is the way that my body wants to naturally work. So what things do I need to do to take advantage of those things, those proclivities, and then where are the inherent weak spots because of my structure? And so these are the things that I need to really spend time on developing. So I've kind of taken the approach, almost like with my martial arts training, of every time I meet someone who has some skills or abilities or experiences that I don't have, I want to learn from them. I want to learn something from them. And then it's just putting it together, trying it. If it works, great, I keep it. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work for me, but at least I have that knowledge. So when someone asks me, hey, what's something I can do to improve my, joining of the upper and lower register, or improve my sound, or things like that, I have this toolbox of things that I can pull from and say, hey, here are 3 things you can try. Give it a shot.
Well, that leads me to a question as far as your martial arts, and we probably don't have enough time today to dig into all the martial arts, but Bobby and I also share that. And my question is, at what point did you make a correlation between martial arts and playing the trumpet, and how has that helped you?
Well, I think that I made the major connection probably about 2005, 2006. So just a quick little side story on this. I actually gave up playing trumpet for 7 years when I was becoming very serious about my martial arts career. I was very competitive, and my teacher couldn't figure out why I had some postural issues. And he saw me play trumpet one day, and he goes, "Oh, this is why your head is always kind of funky." And so I'm like, okay, well, I want to fix that. So I felt like I couldn't do both at the same time. So I just gave up playing. So I didn't play touch the horn for 7 years. And then when I came back in 2000, I was trying to utilize some of the body mechanics that I understood, and then also some of the mental components of, how to direct my energy, how to focus, how to, so all of those things came into play. But then in about 2005 or so, I started to realize that I was reading a book by Jack Canfield, and he had a quote in there that says, "How you do anything is how you do everything." And kind of at that moment, boing, like that's like, oh, well, the way that I got good at martial arts, and the way that I get good at trumpet, or the way that I build a business, or the way that I do anything, really has the same fundamental components. In martial arts, in Chinese martial arts, they call kung fu, a skill that you get through time and hard work. So that's like, duh. So you search out people who have experiences that you don't have. You take that information, you work it, and you work it, and you work it, and then that's how you get good. And you have clear intention, So whether it's hitting that high G, or whether it's joint locking someone or anything else, it's what is your intention? Then what do I need to do that? And then just get out of your way and let the training come out. And so that's kind of how I made that correlation.
I think that's really important. Paul and I, we always talk about in our teaching, in our course and all that, we talk about being non-dogmatic. And the trumpet world at times can be very one-faced. This is the way. And like you're talking about, this guy changes your mouthpiece, he changes your horn, and he changes your embouchure, and that's his way. And he's trying to mold you into something you can't become. And there's a correlation in the martial arts world too, because a lot of times people are just strictly one style, or they're strictly one origin. It might be, hey, we're only into Okinawan, that's the best, or we're into the Chinese arts or whatever. I started to make this correlation between the trumpet and the martial arts, and Paul too, back when we were younger, much younger. But one of the things that I did is I was a one of full contact fighter, and I just remember getting beat at the beginning and thinking, wow, man, these guys got something I don't understand. I'm used to fighting against a guy that fights just like me. I better learn a little bit more about this other stuff. So then I started with Okinawan arts, and then I went to Chinese, and then after that I later studied some Aikido like Paul did, and this and that. And it was very interesting to be open to all this stuff and see how it could help. And so for both Paul and my own personal development on the trumpet, we found that it's really important, at least for us, to look around and figure out, like you're talking, be analytical about it. So you can figure out what works for you and how to weed things out as well,
It's like, for me, so much of my life is tied up in these kind of Eastern concepts, and particularly like the Taoist concept. I'm not, that's not a religion, it's a philosophy. So it's kind of the philosophy that I use to guide my life. And part of that's the yin yang theory, which is technically in Chinese called Tai Chi, the great extremes. For me, that's been so critical because you have to have a balance. And balance is not static, it's very dynamic. So it's finding the right ratios. So in some situations, it pays to be analytical and thorough and, think things through. But that can lead to, paralysis by analysis. So you have to have that intuitive side. And so it's understanding that in any situation that you have these two dynamics that you can work with. And if you're not getting the results that you want, flip it. If you're thinking about things too much, then stop thinking and just fly by the seat of your pants. But if you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're not getting consistent results, then maybe you need to think things through. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned, is that there is that dynamic balance. And then also, like my favorite quote of all time is from the Tao of the Ching. It's the first verse. It's the Tao which can be named is not the true Tao. And that gets into the dogma thing. As soon as you define something, it stops being what it can be. It's only a representation of your perceptions and your experiences and your knowledge, which is very limited. So as soon as we say, this is the way you must do this, then you've completely ruined it, because you've cut off all those opportunities and options that could be there. And so it's I think keeping yourself open is critical, but not so open that you just believe anything that everybody tells you. There has to be a level of personal experience and experimentation.
That's
exactly
great. I just yesterday read an article that somebody was talking about Bruce Lee, and exactly about those things, how he started with one form and realized that, well, that's very dogmatic, and it was set up by probably a disciple of his that was going, okay, well, I'm in competition with this other form, so I'm going to define this, put a name to it, and become dogmatic, and then have these followers. And then somebody else goes, yeah, that's a good idea, but I'm in competition too, so I should do something completely opposite. And it might not even have been what they believed. And as we all here know, and many out there as well, a lot of the books, like for instance, the Louis Maggio book was written, by one student who had the materials that were appropriate for his development and would help him. And it wasn't the way Maggio, taught. And so many of the other books out there are like that too, with that dogmatic approach. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and wasn't it Did Louis Maggio, he fell down and hit one of those, slipped on the ice and hit one of them buttons in the road and knocked out his teeth and messed up his chops and everything. So he had to try to figure out a different way. It's the same thing. I've seen so many, even like really great legit players, talk about how they've switched gear. Switched gear like mouthpieces. They no longer play the one like Herseth did. He had to play that because he'd had an injury. Had that never happened, he himself said, I would have never changed my setup.
And then
So,
unfortunately, we have everybody that followed it that went, oh, well, if Bud plays that, I have to play that. And now it becomes dogma. You know, you
Yeah.
can't be
well,
a symphony
eh,
player unless you're playing a 1C or a 1.5 or 1/4.
and then it gets to like the great all the kung fu movies. There's that, not all of them, but there's a lot of kung fu movies. I'm a very big connoisseur of those growing up. It's like the one school comes to the other and they're going to take them on, and then we're going to rip your sign down. And that's the it just kind of reminds me of that at times. So, well,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit. Let's move into mindfulness, because I think this transitions into there, and really interested to know kind of a little bit more about your book, kind of how you got into that, and can you give us a little bit of an overview of this mindfulness secrets book of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. I was doing a whole lot of online courses for a while when I was running my martial arts school, because I had a lot of people that wanted to study with me, but logistically it wouldn't work out. People actually all over the world that wanted to gain some of my knowledge. So I started to develop courses in an online academy. Now, once I closed my school, I started to shift gears because my interest became less about the punchy kicky stuff and more about the development, what martial arts really can do for you in terms of your personal development. And so many of my students didn't want to hear that. They just wanted to learn how to punch and kick. So I'm like, well, this is my passion, so I got to follow that. So I got out of the martial arts full-time profession, and I started doing like coaching, life coaching, consulting, things like that, stress management. And so I was putting together, I was thinking, yeah, I'm gonna write this course on mindfulness. And as I started to put the course together, I'm like, well, why don't I just make it a book? It's just as easy. So I took all the content that I was writing, for the videos, and I made it a book. And the whole concept is that just like we've learned with martial arts, and we've learned with trumpet playing as well, there's a whole lot of fluff that we put in the stuff. So my thing is all about how can you get the best results in the shortest amount of time. It's not saying a shortcut per se, but it's how do you carve away the things that aren't necessarily necessary for you to get that result, and how do you avoid the detours along the way. Now, with a lot of things, like especially in the martial arts world and the meditation world, things like that, and even in the trumpet world, there's a lot of this kind of stuff that gets thrown in there that has really no actual bearing on your ability to gain results. It's all about proving your worth. So, like in the old days of martial arts practice, like Chinese martial arts being my specialty, they would have you do these really stupid training things, like holding a horse stance, where you're squatted, holding that for an hour or 2 hours, and that was kind of like your test. And if you couldn't do that, then you can't be accepted as my student. Well, is that training really necessary? No, because actually it's counterproductive, because if you stay in a static position for more than like 5 or 10 minutes, your joints actually start to stiffen, and that actually is counterproductive to your overall development. So it was used as a tool to prove your worth, much like with meditation. Sometimes the sitting cross-legged and meditating for 2 hours or 3 hours, that's just to prove your dedication to what is going on, so the teacher can teach you the deeper secrets. The truth of it is, especially from a research side of things, it doesn't take that long to create changes in your brain. Actually, changes in your brain occur like that. When you have a new thought, thoughts are nothing more than neurochemicals, electrical or chemical changes in your brain. So can you change your brain in a second? Absolutely. Now the question is, can you maintain that change? And that's where some of these processes come in, to just kind of moment to moment. So my idea with mindfulness secrets was, okay, let's demystify the whole process of mindfulness, and get down to what it really means, and how it really works, and why it's necessary. And then to simplify it so that it's practical. Because the reason most of us don't practice something like mindfulness is because you're thinking, I don't got 2 hours to practice to do mindfulness practice. I can't meditate for 2 hours, plus practice my trumpet for 2 hours, plus keep the house clean and blah 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 blah. So if you have time, yeah, go for it. But the whole purpose of this book is that there are all these little hidden opportunities to practice and develop the skill. And you actually, what I found is that when you don't have a dedicated practice time, you actually can get more practice in because you're doing it all day long. When you learn how to habit stack, when you learn how to, every time you get off of a phone call, every time you, are at a stoplight, that you just take time to breathe and kind of, refocus or do an affirmation or whatever it is. So you start doing that all day long, and before you know it, you've made all this great improvement because it's effective and it's sustainable in how you're approaching it.
Yeah, those are points well taken, and I couldn't agree more.
I love the idea of you're at a stoplight or you've got a moment after a phone call. That's something that I'm sort of fortunate that I have the same show that I play night after night after night. So I know when those stop signs or when that phone call is going to end, metaphorically speaking, and I have that little chunk of time where I can do some things, and I find that it really helps keep you focused on the task at hand, being the show, but it also can take you away and just calm everything and and sort of reset your energy so that when you are back on the horn, you're ready to go.
Well, and I think that's so critical because when our mind, our brains, so our brain being the physical structure, our mind being the brain in action, that drives everything. That absolutely drives everything. So if you're not taking care of your mind and your brain, then everything else is going to suffer. So taking as many opportunities we can to focus on that health and the development of the strength of our minds and strength of our brain. But I think that so many of us, when we're talking about dogmatic, we think there's only one way to do things. It's like, saying, well, there's only one way to, play trumpet. Well, whose way is that? So if we look at the end result, then we can start to understand that there are a variety of methods that we can use. And that's why the book is, subtitled 90 Ways in 90 Days, because not every way fits with everybody. Some people really dig sitting down and doing meditation. Some people like being out in nature, so you need to do more outside. Some people like music. Okay, like us. So one of the meditations that I suggest people do in terms of like learning to focus your mind is to take a tune that you're familiar with, like a recording, and then pick a portion of it. Like if you're, I'm sure you're like me, like a song comes on, if there's trumpets on it, you're going to zero in on the trumpet.
Oh yeah.
Because that goes with our RAS, the reticular activating system in our brain, and that's what draws our attention to things or keeps things out of our focus. So that's our default. Our default is going to be to hear trumpet. But if you sit down and say, okay, look, I'm going to listen to this recording, and instead of listening to the trumpets, I'm going to listen to the bass, or I'm going to listen to not just the drums, but I'm going to listen to the hi-hat. Now, if you're a great musician, you're probably already doing that stuff anyway, especially like in a jazz setting. You learn how to cue off of the other things that the other instruments are doing. But a lot of times we don't do that. We don't do that kind of conscious listening outside of the musical venue. So if you're driving around, put on a tune, and focus your intention on something that you generally wouldn't listen to in a piece, and see how that shifts your awareness. And as your awareness shifts, you start to not only hear that differently, but you start to see what's going on around you differently because your brain is moving in a different state. So that's like one of the kind of tips that I give people, because you can do that anywhere at any time.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Yeah. I love, opening up, it's opening up your ears as well as your mind. Excuse me. Well, you mentioned shift. So let's shift gears then. And I want to talk about your gear, trumpet playing gear, horns, it's one of those things, you sit down with a bunch of trumpet players. Everybody wants to know what trumpet, what mouthpiece. So, let's get to that.
Gear. Got a
All
lot of
right.
gear. Yeah. Well, my gears kind of changed. For a long time, I played the same stuff, and I got down the rabbit hole, and you know how that can go. But
Oh,
right
yeah.
now, kind of what I've been playing for the past probably 7, 8 years. I've been my both of my horns, my trumpet, and my flugelhorn, made by Terry Walberton, and the flugel is kind of a standard. The trumpet was kind of built from the ground up. Terry kind of had a multiple layers of that you could adjust in the development of the horn. So I'm using uh, a titanium bell horn because the majority of my playing is brick house band kind of stuff, playing in an events band. So I mean, but I am called to do cocktail sets. So in any given night, I can be called to play, everything from Miles Davis to Bruno Mars. So I have to have gear that allows me that level of flexibility. But I find that titanium bell just helps me to cut a little bit over the amplification that's on stage. Um, then it's an extra large bore horn. I can't believe I'm playing that, but it's got a very, very tight back bore, or not back bore, but a very tight lead pipe. So it's kind of my take on Bobby's step bore Z. So it's very tight up front, and it opens up into the valve casings. And then the bell is not a huge bell, but it's super, super vibrant. So it has a lot of overtones. I partnered a couple years ago with Venture Mouthpieces, and they just developed a new line that I've been testing along with Michael Barkley over in Ireland, and then it's called a Drop X. It's kind of the cup is it's actually not the cup. It's based on like the old MF mouthpieces, the kind of the rimless, but they modified it to actually put a rim into it. So it actually reminds me of my old jet tone that I used to play. So it's almost like a convex concave setup, super heavy with overtones. I mean, I can't believe how brilliant it's not only brilliant, but it's got in the lower register, it just has a lot of presence because it's not just all highs. It's very, very well rounded. So but my gear is just all set up for that commercial playing, just being kind of in your face, no apologies. But I found that new Drop X mouthpiece is allowing me to also back off a little bit and get a little bit of a warmer sound in the middle and lower register. So I can use the same mouthpiece all night and play, play standards and then also play September. So
That's cool.
I'm sorry, Bobby. I was just I'm fascinated by the titanium bell thing. I've never tried one or heard anybody that has played one. So I'd like to give that a go sometime.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like a lightweight bell in terms of the brilliance of the sound, the ping. It lights up really quick, but it's super directional. So for playing in amplified settings, that's what you really need, because you want the sound to go like a laser to the mic and not disperse. The old horn I had a really beautiful Colicchio that basically is the model that Freddie used to play, but it had a copper bell, beautiful sounding horn, but the sound was like this. So playing like acoustically, like with a trio, something like that, man, things like butter. But on stage, the sound dispersed so much that it was really hard to have presence when you're trying to light it up. So as I made that conscious decision to focus my energies much more on just being a commercial player in that corporate corporate gig, event band kind of venue, I figured this is the gear that's going to make it easier for me to do my job. Now, would I love to have that old horn back or have a nice old Martin committee or something like? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't have the money and I don't have the need for it. That'd be nice to have and have a nice little arsenal like that. But I right now I need one B flat and a flugelhorn, and I have a pick that I play every once in a while, and that's good enough for me.
The right tool for the job.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. Well, listen, Jose, I know we're just about out of time here. But before we end, I think I'm just going to ask you something here. And I think I'm going to ask you to leave our viewers with maybe just one tip, one thought about playing that's been really important to you that you can pass on, that you recommend people approach and maybe try it. Maybe it could be a mindset thing. It could be a technical thing. It could be a philosophical thing. But just something maybe that's helped. That's been a lot of help for you, and that you recommend maybe other people look into so they can potentially gain some knowledge from it as well.
As opposed to don't quit your day job. That'd be the first. Well, actually, it's kind of a two-parter. The first is, and this is what I got from Roger, it was kind of like groundbreaking to me, is don't play so loud. You don't have to play as loud as you think you have to play, particularly if you are playing, like in a commercial band or something like that. If you have a microphone in front of you, your job is to play. The sound man's job is to make sure that you're getting heard. So trust your sound man to do their job. And if they're sleeping on the job, then that's something that needs to be brought up with the production company. So just back off. It's amazing, especially when you're playing the upper register, what you think, it may sound thin on your end, but because the sound doesn't fully develop until, in some cases, up to 6 feet away from your bell before it fully matures, you're not really hearing your true sound. So just trust that the sound's getting out there and allow it to happen. And then tied with that, and this is something out from Brian Davis, he's like, learn to play more with feel. Understand what a high G feels like. Understand what a double C or a low F sharp, any note. Understand what it feels like and play based on your memory of the feel as opposed to feeling like you have to hear it, because then that also helps you to not play as loud, because your mechanics are right, everything is set up right, the air is going, the horn's in the right position. Trust it and let it happen.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us today. And I know we've talked about the Trumpet Gurus podcast and the videos and all that. And as far as your book, Mindfulness Secrets, where can everybody get that at?
Well, it's available on Amazon, so you can get it on Amazon. You can for Trumpet Gurus, you can always just go to trumpetgurushang.com, listing of all the episodes there. I'll be upgrading that website hopefully soon. But for all of my other stuff, like my mindfulness and that sort of stuff, if you go to josejohnson.com, there's all kinds of information and links and resources and things like that. So
good. Well, we'll be sure to post those links up underneath here as well, so everybody can access them. So thank you so much for being here today. This has been really enlightening, and we're going to have to bring you back and learn even more from you. So we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. We know you're busy, and thank you so much for being here with us, Jose.
Oh, thank you. Anytime, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks, Jose.